Get started. Hello, everyone. Thanks joining Vancouver Fabric and Power BI user group. This is our second meetup. Thanks for coming to the first one. I see some of the faces or names from the first one, and thanks for joining. And today we have wonderful Zoe Douglas as a senior product manager at Microsoft with us to talking about Power BI and OneLake. I actually met Zoe first time at FabCon in first FabCon in Las Vegas. I'm not sure about Sandeep, but it was a pleasure meeting you, and thanks for coming and presenting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, so just before we start, a little bit about me. I'm from Vancouver, who's actually started this user group, and luckily Sandeep decided to join with me, and so glad to have him with me. And I'm pretty sure I'm good. So let Sandeep talk about himself. I just work all Power BI and on my own consulting and do all things Power BI, so-called now Fabric. It's just mixed everything together. I have a YouTube channel called Power BI How To, and LinkedIn per channel. Please feel free to connect and just to be. I'm not very active on LinkedIn, but still active enough to share some interesting stuff. So, Sandeep.
Yeah, I'm Sandeep. um, I'm a senior Power BI architect at Hitachi Solutions. We are a Microsoft Gold partner, and I write blogs at fabric.guru. And unlike Perv, I am very active on Twitter. It's very unlikely that you are on Twitter and you haven't heard from me. So if you have not, feel free to follow me there.
So, all right. Zoe, just tell us about yourself.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. My name is Zoe Douglas, and I work on the product group at Microsoft for Power BI and Fabric, which is very exciting. I've been here just over 2 years now. And before that, I was Power BI consultant as well. I am more active on LinkedIn than anywhere else. I am on Twitter, but generally someone has to tell me that, hey, someone's like saying something on Twitter before I'll go and check Twitter, because every time I log in, it forgets who I am and I have to go reset my password and it becomes very irritating. So that's why I'm not very good at Twitter, but I'm much better on LinkedIn. I usually post a lot of my updates on LinkedIn, and I try to keep up over there. And other than that, you can see obviously my updates on the Power BI blog. And we just did the update yesterday, and I have a little demo in that one actually for the DirectQuery view in the web. But yeah, so that's me. I'm obviously a little bit excited about Power BI and Fabric, by nature of my job. But I was also, before I joined the job, I was also very excited about it. So it was a natural union there. So yeah, so yeah, go ahead, Vandeep.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't know you were a Power BI consultant before you joined.
Yeah, I just kind of started like engaging more with the community. I was a super user on the community forum, and I just started doing speaking engagements actually, like very, very recent. And then I applied for the position I got here at Microsoft, and so the rest is, I guess, history. So yeah, so the first speaking I did was I was in Oklahoma at the time, and I spoke at one of the Oklahoma Power BI user groups. That's the first time I heard of them. Sometimes I joke I learned Power BI under a rock because I didn't know about the community at all. I was just playing around with Power BI and doing all the things. But I used to do mentoring, kind of local mentoring and stuff like that. So, but yeah, once I saw the community, I was like, oh my gosh, I could have had all this amazing advice much sooner. But oh well.
Very nice.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Before we give it to Zoe to present today's whatever she's going to talk about. So we're going to record this and probably we share the link with everyone tomorrow so that you guys can watch later on or can share with others. A couple of things. Please keep yourself muted during the presentation and raise your hand if you have any question. And if you're putting a question in the chat window, I will be monitoring. Actually, Sandeep is good at that. And please prefix with Q. I think I'm going to start using Q&A feature of Teams going forward. That's better than using this method. And the most exciting part of this is after at the end of the event, we will use Fabric to do the raffle draw for us, which we did last time as well. So this is our tradition we're going to do. We pick up 3 winners and then go from there. And now I'm going to hand over to Zoe and let her share her screen and go from there. All
Awesome.
yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so let me go. I have some slides, and then I actually want to do some more demos. So let me figure out how to do PowerPoint. 1 second. All right. So I'm just going to move this. All right. So when you guys are pushing, you want to kind of talk about kind of stuff we did at FabCon and earlier this year in Vegas. So let me share my screen. Make sure you can see my slide. I think I'm sharing the right screen. So if someone can give me a thumbs up or say it's good. Okay, perfect. Right, so we talk about Power BI with OneLake and kind of Fabric's role in the Delta Parquet transformation, which is a lot of big words. But so what does it mean now that Power BI is part of Fabric, right? So sometimes it can seem like the Power BI workspace all of a sudden got all these new friendly neighbors. So one of the things the OneLake provides is kind of single copy of data, right? So you can use a single copy of data across multiple workloads in Fabric, right? So that's the big value prop of OneLake. No longer kind of having data over here, data over there. So we have the data that now Power BI can read, and I want to talk about that a little. So we have also the amazing DirectLake mode, right? But this is the same data that can be also read by other workloads. So you can do a notebook, you can do, warehousing, all this kind of stuff, or SQL, whatever you want to do. It's going to be kind of using that data in the OneLake, and that is kind of the key here for Fabric. Right, so traditionally in Power BI, we've had 2 storage modes, right? So we have import mode, where we're bringing the data in, but it's in that kind of native format that Analysis Services uses, and we can just read it and make these reports really snappy, right? So it's in so when we store it in kind of a like column of storage format, which is the same kind of thing that Parquet files use. So that's why now we have kind of this Delta table, the Parquet files, we can actually scan them, right? Before we also had DirectQuery, where if we didn't move your data, like in import, you had your data in a SQL database, you moved it over into, now you also had it in your analysis search, your Power BI semantic model. But you had to continually refresh, right? So you had to keep bringing that data and copying it over to have that really great performance. It's what many people still do already. And then you also have DirectQuery. So now if you have a SQL database, maybe we would say, okay, fine, don't move the data, just transform those DAX queries on those visuals to a SQL query. But that translation step is kind of brings some latency, and then you're putting a lot of burden on that SQL database, right? So the SQL database needs to be pretty beefy, and actually having kind of like columns or indexes like actually help with that performance. But now we have OneLake, and now we can actually have the data in the OneLake, and we can use DirectLake to kind of read that data. So we can have these massive kind of volumes that's even prohibitive, not only for import, but also DirectQuery. Like it can, there's a lot of data coming in, and we can just scan it, which makes it a lot faster. Now, so in Fabric, we have the OneLake, which is where we're getting access to these Parquet files. Now, also in the OneLake and in Fabric, we have a whole bunch of SQL endpoints, right? So we have the Lakehouse, you bring data in, put it in the OneLake, and unless you have a SQL endpoint as well. So you can even do import and DirectQuery on that data as well, right? So when you have your data in Fabric, you're not limited to DirectLake mode. You actually have this amazing ability to use DirectLake mode. But if you wanted to, you can still use import and DirectQuery, which is actually kind of cool. The other thing about DirectLake is because we do have those SQL endpoints as well, if there's any issue with accessing the data in the Delta table in the Parquet files, it will actually automatically fall back to DirectQuery. So we can talk about, I'll be talking about that one quite a bit actually. So a lot of questions, usually there's a lot of questions around DirectLake and the fallback behavior to DirectQuery. When does that happen? How can I stop it from happening? what should I be careful for when I'm building these models to make sure I'm having the best experience with DirectLake and not kind of running into any kind of pitfalls. Okay. Oh, I see. And then we have, so again, this is also something that's coming up. We presented this in FabCon, right? So right now we have that DirectLake with the fallback, so it talks to the SQL endpoint too. So you can kind of think of it downstream from the SQL endpoint. But now we actually are working on a new version of DirectLake that we should be coming out with it's not out yet, so just hold your horses on that one. But this is where we're not going to rely on that SQL endpoint anymore. And we're not going to have that fallback behavior. We are just going to go to the Parquet file. We're not going to talk to the SQL endpoint. Now this becomes really important for those of you who want to kind of, if you put security on the SQL endpoint, you do views, right? All that kind of stuff's going to cause fallback issues at the DirectLake. So now you can say, okay, well, I want my semantic model to be actually off the lakehouse, not the SQL endpoint. And now you can do that. And then it also opens up a lot more data sources in Fabric, right? So don't have that. So here we have another thing that's been asked for, right? So right now, you can only create and edit these DirectLake semantic models in the workspace, right? So using web modeling, using tabulator, using XML endpoint, all those kind of cool things. But desktop wasn't one of them. So we showed this off in FabCon as well. So sneak peek of editing these DirectLake semantic models you have created in your Fabric workspace and editing them in desktop, right? So this is kind of cool. So you'll have the same interface you have always had. You'll be able to go ahead and make changes. Now this is live editing. So one of the things to note with this live editing is changes you're making in desktop are actually happening on that semantic model you have in the workspace, right? So same as web modeling, you make those changes, it's going to be automatically changing that model because we need the analysis services engine in desktop to kind of validate the things that you're doing. Obviously with DirectLake, we can't have it running on your computer. That's why we have DirectLake. So we are still using the analysis services engine in the workspace to do this. So this is very exciting. We also have, if you're using developer mode, right, you can still use develop. You can export the DirectLake semantic model into a PBIP, right? So Power BI project. And you can have a local copy of your DirectLake semantic model metadata on your computer. You can hook it up with the Git integration with the workspaces. You can have a report view, right? With live editing without the developer, you don't have the report view. And then you can have that experience here. Now, you're still live editing that semantic model in the workspace. As I said, the engine needs to run over there in the workspace. So you just will also have a local copy of the metadata in this way. So this is also coming soon. This is, we're very excited about this one. We're working really hard on this guy. So these are kind of some sneak peeks of what's coming with DirectLake as well. All right, so another thing that is actually kind of cool, and it's a little bit of a flip of what we were just talking about, right? So DirectLake is using the data you have in the OneLake to create a semantic model. You're like, but I have this fantastic import model. I've been working on this thing for years. It's fantastic, and I love it. And what am I going to do with this lovely model? Like, there's a migration story, but I'm not going to get into that. But what I actually want to talk about is your import models also have a lot of value in the OneLake as is, right? So if you publish this, you move it over, deploy it, whatever you want to call it, to the workspace, right? So the Fabric workspace, you can turn on OneLake integration. And this is simply a toggle in the semantic model settings. And what happens is when that import model refreshes, a copy of the data also gets stored in the OneLake. Now, this is really cool because now that data is available to the other workloads, right? So you can do your notebooks, you can, shortcut it to a warehouse, shortcut it to a lake house, all those cool things. You'll have that import data now available to you for all of Fabric, right? So this is actually kind of a neat thing that I remember I think I was at PassDash. We public previewed this in last year with the Fabric, and someone asked me about this they come up to me and they're like, oh, maybe it'd be cool if we could actually just have the tables we have in import model. I'm like, I think we do that. And they're like, no. And I'm like, I think we do. I heard something. And so that is, right? So this is then kind of, and this includes like if you have calculated columns, calculated tables in your model, right? Obviously, you cannot put your measures in this. It's not, instantiated into memory, right? But the stuff that is in your memory, like if you you rename columns, you rename tables, you have calculated columns, you have calculated tables, those will actually go to the OneLake as part of this process, which is quite cool. All right, so there's some words here that I didn't realize were here. And then eventually the North Star is to make the Delta Parquet kind of the native storage, but that's definitely a kind of a vision here. All right, so another thing we also want to do with the DirectQuery on OneLake is allow for multi-source, right? So right now, the limitation with DirectQuery is you have to source from a single lakehouse or a single warehouse. You can also, in that lakehouse, you can create shortcuts to other lakehouses or warehouses, right? So you can consolidate them all into one lakehouse. You can almost think of in Direct Lake, you can almost think of the lakehouse as kind of your new get data experience, right? Instead of going into the transform data into the Power Query experience where you're bringing all your sources in and then you're building a model, you can do that in the lakehouse. And the lakehouse has amazing tools to go get data, right? So you have Power Query Online with like data flows, and you have Notebook, and you can just upload a file, right, and create a table, that kind of stuff. Like you have all these really cool tools available to you to get data into the lakehouse, including shortcutting to other lakehouses or warehouses, right? So, but one of the things we want to do is actually let you create connections to multiple data sources, right? So if I have my direct lake semantic model, eventually I will be able to actually say, get me a table from this lake house and get me a table from that lake house and this warehouse, right? And eventually we want to do true composite where you can bring in import directly, whatever you want, right? So have everything available to you. That's a lot further out. That's kind of our vision for kind of where we want to take direct lake. But for right now, we're still limited to just the one lake house, one warehouse. All right. So this was just talking about kind of the direct lake on OneLake, which is that new one we don't have yet, right? So we'll work with one security, all that kind of stuff. So this is from FabCon, obviously. So we had it in. These are the things that we kind of pushed into public preview at in the February timeframe this year. We're now in August, right? We have coming soon, and we have sneak peek, right? So the sneak peek is at direct lake on OneLake. But so we put in public preview the Copilot DAX preview, which I'll show a demo of today. So I'm the PM for the DAX preview and DAX preview Copilot, as well as Direct Lake. And then we have the, other Copilots in Power BI. We had explored, public previewed, visual calcs, and the OneLake integration, right? The one I just told you about. You just put it up there, flip a toggle, and now, hey, it's in my OneLake, which is fantastic, and developer mode. And so these are all like really new stuff. Like I've heard some things like we aren't doing much with Power BI. We're doing a lot with Power BI, right? A data queue and answering questions. So we have Copilot mode. This stuff is still kind of coming. The Fabric metrics layer, and then T-SQL queries for import semantic models. So that's utilizing that OneLake integration as well. But also without the OneLake, I'm not quite sure if it's actually the OneLake, but these are still coming, right? So we haven't actually done any more on this guy. And then of course, sneak peek means it's a little further out, which is the direct link on OneLake. I don't know why Copilot for mobile is in both of these buckets. Actually, now look at these slides. And then the Fabric apps. And I'm not sure if anyone, so in FabCon, we talked about having, right now you have one app per workspace. There's this Fabric app coming as well, where you can have multiple apps per workspace, which is kind of cool, but it's not out just yet. All right, so that's all the cool kind of FabCon stuff that Sandeep wanted me to had asked me to present. So that's kind of the stuff we showed at FabCon, and all about those kind of direct lake things. So I've set up a little demo so we can kind of go through some of these things and kind of show kind of the things that you can do. Yes, we all need multiple apps for workspace. All right, so I have here my workspace, and I have brought in some data. So I had a notebook, and what I did is I actually ran on my blog. I have this script which I use for demos, which is to kind of generate data. I have a little. I'm working on an adjustment, but this one's just a little bit different than what I have here. But if you want to kind of have a walkthrough of kind of how do you create these lake houses, how do I create the direct lake semantic model? What do I have to do here? I have a walkthrough right here in my blog. And this is the script that I used to generate the one I'm going to show today. There's also lots of ways to get data into DirectLake, but I found this was kind of easiest to kind of quickly demo. Right, I can create a billion row table in a few minutes and I'm good to go. Right, so here I have my notebook. If I open this up, we can see the script that I ran. I was trying to get like a moving average to go up. It just made really big numbers, but you'll see that in a minute. So here I just create a few tables, like a date table, product table, geo table, just a few dimensions. My measure table, because I really like putting my measures in their own little table. And then I can make as many sales tables as I want, right? So then I can give them as many rows. So if I want to make a 200 table model with like 1,000 rows each, or if I want to make one really big or multiple big, right? Then this is what I'm doing. So this is just a script that I came up with. Copilot and I came up with, this is one that I've been using. Okay, so I have this guy and it went into my lake house here. So let's go back to this guy. And I use this tassel just to I use this kind of like as a shortcut to find things. Like sometimes I'll put things in folders and then I don't know where anything is. And I find I've been using this to kind of find my stuff. So here's my lake house where I put the data in. Again, I told you, so we have to bring data into the lake house, into that Parquet file to use it in DirectLake. So here you have, obviously you can upload a file. You can do a pipeline. You can do Gen 2 data flow, which is Power Query. You can even like copy from desktop the query into these data flows. I did that's actually kind of neat. You can do a new shortcut, so I can go grab data from another OneLake here, right? So I have another one in this semantic model. I can hit next, and I can actually bring that table in here if I wanted to. And then the event stream and stuff like that. So here I have all my tables, and you can see they have, oh, I forgot I made that one. I was testing with that earlier. Right, so you can see the data coming here, and you also have, of course, the SQL endpoint as well created. If I go to the SQL endpoint, I can run SQL queries, right? There's Copilot, there's all kinds of cool things here to help you along the way. Now for DirectLake, what you don't want to do in that SQL endpoint is put in like row of security or create views to create your DirectLake with, otherwise they will fall back to DirectQuery. Anytime, you can think of it this way, anytime you have your DirectLake, you want it to talk to the Parquet file. You want to talk to the Delta table to have that DirectLake mode be really fast. If it has to talk to the SQL endpoint, it's talking SQL, right? And it's not going to be going to the Parquet file anymore. So views, you always have to go get that information from the SQL endpoint. It's always going to be talking SQL. So it's going to fall back into DirectQuery because DirectQuery is how we talk SQL. All right, so now I've created my lake house. Let's actually go back to the lake house. Now you can create the DirectLake semantic model either on the SQL endpoint or the lake house with this new semantic model button. And this will only create DirectLake. So you see it there, or if you come here, you go to reporting and there's new semantic model. There's also a default semantic model that is created in all the SQL endpoints. Now you'll see some tables here, but if you come here, they're all created empty now. Previously, they were auto-populated with tables, but now they're created empty. And then when we first put DirectLake out, what happened was we would, if you created relationships and measure here, we'll bring that into the new DirectLake semantic model. We're no longer doing that either. So they are separate entities. So if you can create your default semantic model here if you like, but there are some limitations. You don't have the full kind of web modeling experience available to you. It is web modeling, but we don't have some of the properties here. And you also cannot edit it with XMLA. So if you want to use tablet editor, you want to do signature management, whatever you want to do, you cannot write to this one. You also cannot do DAX queries. So there's a few limitations just to keep mind of when you're doing this one. So just keep that in mind. If you're like, oh, hey, there's already one created, I'll choose that one. You can, and it's perfectly fine and good, and it's DirectQuery. It has a fallback, same idea. But there are just, if you wanted to do XMLA, if you wanted to do other things with it, then you may want to consider just doing the new semantic model and having it as a kind of standalone DirectQuery semantic model. All right, so I'm going to go back to the lake house here, and I'm going to click new semantic model, and you'll see this dialog, and you type it in. So this is my new direct lake, and you'll come over here, and now you can bring in the tables you want. I don't have a view, but if you actually selected a view, a little warning will show up here and explain, hey, by the way, this is going to fall back to DirectQuery. And then if you click Learn More, it'll go to the Direct Lake documentation. I forgot to hit product. Right. So now I'm going to create this. When you create it off a lake house, it will open up in the web modeling experience here in a moment. One thing to keep, if you do it in the SQL endpoint or a warehouse, what happens, pop-up blocker generally catches it. So you have to go get it out of the pop-up blocker in your URL. So yes, if you use a view, it'll give you that warning that you're going to fall back. We wanted to make sure that you were aware. Right, so now we're in the kind of web modeling experience, and you can get back this by right-clicking on the table. You can go ahead and create your relationships between your tables. There's no preview. We had that on for a while, but we got a lot of feedback because it runs those queries, and there were concerns about cost. So that has been turned off. So there's no validation here. So you just want to make sure you're creating this relationship in the way you expect. We want to bring in that validation, but we just want to make sure those queries are kind of be more performant. You're not going to be waiting a long time. These tables can get really big. The other thing is consider is do the assume referential integrity if you know that all the values. So in this case, I know that all of my date IDs in my date table or in my sales table are in my date table, right? So that's when you want to use that kind of assume referential integrity. It has a little bit of performance improvement when it does pull back to direct queries. It uses a inner join. But if you don't have that referential integrity, if you don't know that all the dates are covered in your date table, it can exclude them with an inner join. So just something to be aware of. And of course, we have the cross filter and these ones. Right, so I'm going to go ahead and create this relationship here. And you can also do this, across the board for each one. Now you'll notice I'm dragging from the sales table to the dimension because I know it defaults to many to one. So that's a little tip for you. If I did it this way, it will go ahead and do many to one, but it's doing product to sales, and that's not what I want. I would have to change that at this point to one to many to make sure it's in the right cardinality. Another thing you can do is you can use the Model Explorer over here, and you can even create a new relationship in the properties pane. This is really helpful if you have a lot of tables and you're like, oh, I have to go find this table and drag it over to this table. No, you don't. You can just come in here and then you can search for whatever you're looking for. So this is the product. You just have to enter everything in manually. Like I prefer to do it kind of this one. I usually do product up here. And then we do product ID, single, assume referential integrity, and then we can apply the changes there, right? So there's a couple ways you can actually create these relationships. You can also do manage relationships and then new relationship too, if you want to start from a blank on the other one. So we have lots of options for you. If you click on it, you can edit these. You can actually click multiple, like say after that, assume referential integrity. You can select them all over here. Or you can do, make them all inactive, make them all active, all that kind of stuff. You click away, nothing gets saved. You have to hit that apply changes button. All right, so that's that. Now, what else you can do here is just like then you can rename things. You can't remove columns. Technically, you can if you use tablet editor. We're just not letting you do it in here because we actually have no way to bring it back. So we're kind of lucky for now until we have a good kind of story for that. But you can hide them. Oops, I can't type today. Product. You can hide them. You can do all that kind of stuff, and we can save files, right? So you can rename these things. And then if you want to now say you added a new table into your lakehouse, you added a column, you changed a column, you need to do a schema refresh. The way you do that is you go to edit tables. And if you don't make any changes, you can just hit confirm. You can unselect the table to remove it. And then you're back in it. So right now it's doing that kind of schema refresh. So if you're in Power BI desktop creating an import model, when you hit refresh, there's a schema refresh, data refresh, and a visual refresh. But this one, to do a schema refresh, you would just go into edit table and hit confirm. And it'll just go check with the lakehouse and say, hey, did you add any columns? Did you remove any tables? That kind of stuff. The renaming here does not impact that edit tables dialog. You'll see these are all going to be in the old name that they are, because this is getting the data from the lakehouse. All right, so now if you rename something in the warehouse, though, then all of a sudden your table will no longer show. You'll see the new name. When you do the schema refresh, it'll drop from your table, from your model. You have to go bring it in with a new name and reset up all your stuff on that table. If it has a measure, it should be saved. It's in your model, and then you can move it to the new table, and then that table will go away. All right, so you can do calculation groups, you can do measures, obviously. So I could do a new measure here, and I can say, let's do, taking a minute. Oh, you can also market the date table and, give format strings to columns and all that kind of stuff, right? So you can do all the modeling things you can before. This one's in DirectQuery. It seems like I broke it. Oh no, I broke it. So we do count rows on the sales here, right? And again, you can see I have this handy Copilot here that will help you create measure descriptions if you like. We can put things in folders, we can hide it, all that kind of stuff. So we have all that stuff going. Usually it is not quite this slow, but I am demoing, so maybe it's doing something there. Right, so now we can see that. I can go ahead and format it. I can do custom, all that kind of stuff. I can even do dynamic format strings if I want to, right? So if you want to have it dynamically change, there's a whole thing on dynamic format strings for measures. You can do that here as well. All right, so I won't make you go through and do all the modeling with me. I already have one that I've created, which is my Direct Lake model here. I have data Direct Lake. And I can just go back into my model here. You can see I've already kind of hidden a whole bunch of things. I've created a bunch of, well, I've created 5 measures. I have those relationships. I have those tables here. It's off the same data that you saw before, right? And then I have also my Direct Lake report, which I actually created in desktop. So you'll see I have, I tried to do kind of a moving average up. Anyway, I made really big numbers. These are ridiculously high numbers. This one's in Direct Lake, right? So even with these very large numbers, I didn't have to schedule a refresh. I didn't have to set up a refresh. I literally just created the model just like I was doing. Then I went over to desktop, live connected, created a report, published it up. And it was easy going that way. I kind of almost forget, I have to refresh when I do an input model. And that's oh no, and I have to wait. You don't have to do that with Direct Lake. Right, so you have all these, and you can see it's extremely performant, very, very fast. And so if I open up this guy, this is in desktop. So this is just live connected to Data Direct Lake, right? So I have this one here. Again, I can kind of click around and do stuff here. This is where I created it, was in desktop. You can create them in the web, but there's more things to do. There's more kind of options here in desktop. In Live Connect, I still have access to DaxQuery View, which is new. We just put this out, I think, last month, month before, right? So now I can actually write DAX queries on my Direct Lake model. So we can go say, okay, Zoe, you said you had 1 billion rows. I still have 1 billion rows here. And I can use my quick queries here in DAX Query View to kind of do these queries for me, so I don't have to always type it out. The summarize columns is kind of one of my favorites because it has a lot of versatility, which is why we picked it for this evaluate. Thank you, Sandy. And then I also think DAX queries is the best thing that happened, but I'm PM, so I'm completely biased. So here we have, I can see this by product, right? So I can now add my group by column. It's very easy in DAX queries versus SQL queries. I don't have to do like a group by or all those other things. It is built for this, right? You don't have to define relationships because they're already defined in the model. Now I can even, one of the things you can do, so I like this because in the summarize columns has kind of 3 parts is the way I think about it, is you have the group by columns, which is kind of what you're going to separate those rows by. You have your measures, which can be measures in the model, or you can just create another one right here. And you can also do filters, right? So I can filter the products, product equals, I hadn't fixed this one. This one has a typo with the accessories. And then I can do bikes, right? And I could filter this, run this, and now I'm filtering. A better way to do this also is to do kind of, instead of doing the whole thing, you can actually do it on just the product column. This can be more performant. As you can see, I don't really have any performance issues with my billion rows here with this one. So I can add in like say year, I can add in more group by columns, all this kind of goodness. You can format here and you can also comment things out, run them, and all this kind of good things. Oh, I don't know. I didn't notice that either, Sandy. I'll go ask about that later. But the summarize columns can be now used in measures, right? So another thing, a tip for DAX Query View is a lot of times what I see people doing is you'll say evaluate, and then I want to look at my measure, right? So I want to look at orders, right? So if you try this, you're going to get this unhelpful error. Which this already have is telling you this is not a valid table expression, right? So it's saying, hey, you cannot, this is just a scalar value. Oops, I need to Copilot one sec. Right, so, but you can convert it really quickly just by putting it in curly braces. So now I can simply do a measure expression here. Now, I can't do anything else at this point, right? So it's just going to do the all up number. And that might be what you just need just for a quick way of seeing kind of what's going on. But really you want to do the kind of summarize columns or summarize, and you do it by kind of a group by column. So this is also convert that to this guy. But now, oops, I had to put a name, sorry. Orders. And run that. And now I can again add my group by columns, add in all those kind of things, and kind of get more out of this. Now what's cool about this is like I'm in Live Connect, right? So I can't actually make changes to my measures, but we also just released, of course, that preview in the web. So let's go back to my workspace, my DirectQuery model here, and I can go write task queries. Now what's cool about this one is this is a DirectQuery semantic model, which I can only edit in that web model experience, but now I can also good question, Sandy. Yes, I want to do that, but not right now. It's not planned just yet. But yes, I absolutely want to bring in the kind of server timings and debugging tools and all that kind of stuff into DAX Query View. I think it'd be amazing, but not just yet. So it is on my list. I promise you. I will keep fighting for that one. Right, so here we can run those DAX queries now in the web. Now there's a big difference here. So when you're running in Live Connect, you're running in Power BI Desktop. If I close this file, oops, where is my file? So this one here, I've created all these tabs, right? If I save this file, now it's not saving my model, it's actually going to save in my report, right? So this is a Live Connect. It's just named, it's going to save with the PBX file. And then this one here, we say DAX queries are discarded and close, right? So we're not saving anything you do in the web, right? You'll still have that sample query every time you open up, and you're not even going to see the queries that are previously saved in this model. right? So if I had an import model, I have a bunch of queries, I publish it to the service, I open it up, DAX query view in the web, I'm not going to see those queries. We do plan on bringing them in eventually. We want to get DAX query view to you faster, so without saving was the way to go. Now what's cool about this is on those measures, right? So I can do evaluate, but now I can also define and evaluate. I can define with references and evaluate. So if you have measures that reference other measures, that reference another measure, that reference yet another measure, you can edit them all at once, right? So let's do define and evaluate here. Now I can see that DAX query here, that evaluate, and I can run it. But now I also have the definition here is as a query scoped measure, right? So this is the model measure. We have report measures, but here we can look at this query one. So I can actually make changes here. We can divide it by 1,000,000, so it's a smaller number, right? And I can run this, and I can see it's reduced. Now, this measure has not been updated. If I hover on this guy, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. If I hover on this guy, you'll see the peak, and it'll tell you, hey, this is the DAX formula I'm using in this query, but also it's also in the measure, and it's using this other DAX formula. So it's going to tell you, so if you're making a lot of changes and you're like, what did I do? Do I want to save this back? I don't remember. You can just come in here and quickly see what that measure was. Now I can save that measure. I can overwrite it because it can see that this measure already exists in my model, and I'll overwrite it. I can also click this button up here. But this button up here becomes really cool when you have more than one measure, right? So pick a measure. Let's do actually orders per million, right? And then we can say divide, let's do it properly, the divide statement instead of this one. 1, 2, 3. Right? So now now you'll see the text is changed to add new measure. And I can bring that guy in here, down here. So you'll see the IntelliSense. It's going to actually pick up that query, that DAX I have there. So that DAX measure doesn't exist in my model, but it can tell that I have this measure defined in this query, right? So I can run this. Obviously, I have that still going for me here. And I can even format my measures, run it, and I can update my model, right? So I'm updating, adding that measure in, and you can see it in over there. Right, so this is some of the really cool things you can do with DAX Preview. We also have a Copilot, of course. So if I come in and I can say, one of the things, so this Copilot, I think I get a little off topic. I'll go back to DirectLake here in a minute. This is still my DirectLake model, right? So I have Copilot. I can ask it to write me a DAX query. I can ask it to suggest some measures that I can add to my model. I can even have it explain a DAX topic or explain DAX for me. And I think this is kind of one of the cooler things about this one. We can also do so I can say suggest measures, right? So it's going to, what these buttons have is kind of like a predefined prompt. So it's going to suggest new measures with a DAX query, further analysis, and try them out with one or more suitable columns, right? So it's trying to go in ahead and look at your model and try to take it to the next step here. I did see that's what happened. Okay. I'm going to zoom out just a smidgen. You'll see it's generated it's dividing my profit by orders, right? And I can run this before I keep it. So I can kind of test it out. Okay, cool, this is good. And I can keep it. I can also adjust it further. So I say show me this by country, right? So I can have it now adjust an additional one. I can have it explain it. If I don't quite, if I want to kind of get more information about what summarized columns is, what I can do with it, I can ask it about it, that kind of stuff. And then I don't have to go off to the internet and find it. This is kind of one of the cool ones, is you can see a diff for things that changed. We wanted to be kind of very clear on kind of what it's changing here, right? And you can also say, say, oops, I meant by state, right? It's conversational. You can just kind of continue to ask it stuff now and again run it as soon as it comes back with information. Right, so that's how it's kind of, there we go. So it's changed it out now to be state of territory. Can run it, and I can keep this query. I can add these measures to my model. All this kind of fun stuff with DirectQuery. Let's see, let's ask it to explain this query. All right, so I'm going to say, hey, what is this doing? It's going to give me kind of a natural language response. It's going to explain kind of what's happening. So if you're kind of not sure what's happening with something, it'll give you a nice long explanation that's kind of give you this. So define the two measures and using them to summarize by state and product, right? And it says, you know, what define does, what the evaluate does, kind of summarize, used to group by the data, and then calculate the average profit or an average profit for each group, right? So it's going to go give you that kind of more helpful answer than, you know, that you can get with kind of Copilot. So you can also say, tell me about summarized columns. Right, so we have summarized columns here. We have some information in this kind of little peek here. It says create a summary table for the requested totals over a set of groups, right? Which is concise, but you know, maybe not exactly helpful. And then so now you can have kind of Copilot's going to say, create a summary table of a set of groups, power functions to perform aggregation operations while defining, right? And then it has examples, tells you about the results, and all that information. Now, if you want a thumbs up, thumbs down, that'll give us feedback. If you don't like it, tell us why. We read that feedback. All right. So that is, again, we are querying the OneLake data with DirectQuery view here, and I can do it in desktop and I can do it in the web. All right, so let's go back over here. So we have my report. The report is very fast, right? But you said that I could, if I told you earlier, you can actually use this data, right, without having to use DirectQuery. So let's go take a look how you do that. So I'm going to open up a blank report in Power BI Desktop, and I'm going to show you how you can actually create a connection to this data using import or DirectQuery. I won't actually run the import one because a billion rows is a bit too much for Power BI Desktop. In import mode, it's bringing a lot of data in, even though this data is not a high cardinality, it's a lot of integers in that big table, it's still a lot of data. I think I can bring in about, I think I did it once, I brought about 40 to 50 million rows, and that was about a gig. Right, so it's a lot of data in the billion rows, which I think is almost, when I'm using it, I feel like I don't quite see it. Okay, so if I go to the OneLake Data Hub here, and then I go to, it should show me at the top here, there's that lake house I have here, and I can actually go connect to that SQL endpoint. Now when I click to the SQL, oh, hello. Oh, I must not have that. This one's the wrong one, so hold on. Let's see. Oh, not that one. The wrong one. Give me 1 second. All right, so here we have the filters applied. Let's go to SQL Annex endpoints. This is not the one I'm looking for. Oh, anyway, it's not cooperating with me right now. But let's do this one. This one has a lot of tables, which is why it's called lots of tables. As you can see, I'm very good at naming. So it's going to create that connection. We saw that really quickly there. It has that kind of gobbledygook SQL endpoint connection here. This is what they kind of look like when you go to if you go to SQL endpoint, you can get this connection details and like open up like SQL Server Management Studio, all those kind of things. And I can bring in my tables here. Again, you have a preview. As you can see, I have a lot of tables in this one. And I can transform. So I'm going to go to Power Query just like you would before. Or I can simply load it. I think, yeah. Now it's going to ask me if I want to do this import or DirectQuery. Obviously, I think I'm going to do DirectQuery for this one. And it's going to bring us in. And now you're just doing semantic modeling like you could before, right? So you are not, well, if you have your data in Fabric and in OneLake, right, you can get at it in all the existing ways you can now, plus the additional awesomeness that is DirectQuery. All right, so here we have, let me just see how many rows I have in this thing. I don't remember quite. I think this one only has, I think, this one I think only has 10,000. That was playing around with lots of tables, not lots of rows. Let's see. 100,000. Now, if I look at this in Performance Analyzer here, right? Oops, refresh visuals. You'll see I'm in DirectQuery mode, and I can see that down here. So it says DirectQuery, but I see a DirectQuery line in the Performance Analyzer. So this is actually one of the ways you can test if your DirectLake is in DirectLake or DirectQuery, right? So that came back pretty fast. You'll see there's no DirectQuery line. I can refresh those visuals. Let's clear and refresh them again, right? And I can see that I don't have a DirectQuery line. Now, if I go back to my workspace, go back to that DirectLake model that this one's feeding off of, and I open up the data model. So now I'm editing again in the service. If you go to this model explorer over here, you have the server, which is the XMLA endpoint. You have the database ID, which is not exciting, but it's in the URL. And you have this DirectLake behavior. Right now it's automatic, which means it'll do DirectLake if it can, and if it can't, it'll fall back to DirectQuery. But you can actually say, don't fall back to DirectQuery. I want my visuals to error if there's a problem so I can see it and I know something's wrong. Or you can do DirectQuery only, right? So now I've made that change. Now I'll go back to desktop, refresh my visuals, and now we are waiting a little bit longer for this data to come back. See the cards up here. Let's see. That's my shapes, my slicers. But you'll see my cards, everything is now falling back to DirectQuery, right? So if I open this guy up, I see that DirectQuery line. So that's kind of one of the things you're like, oh, this one's running a little slow and it's in automatic mode. How do I tell if I'm falling back? This is how you'll tell. Now, this is actually quite slow. I think it's just because it's very cold cache. If I refresh this, it will be a little bit faster, but it's very slow. Usually the DirectQuery isn't quite this slow. It's actually pretty good on the Fabric SQL endpoints. All right, so let's go here, refresh the visuals, see if it comes back any faster. But now I can simply just go back. So we'll let that do its thing. We'll come back and we can do DirectLake only. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make that change. And take just a moment. Okay, probably waiting for my queries to come back. Yeah, it looks like it did. Right, so now we can see this guy. We can, oh, it must have stopped it when I changed the mode. So I clear it, refresh my visuals. Again, they're coming back in very fast. And I no longer have a DirectQuery line. So you can see this is definitely going in DirectLake mode, and you can see just how quickly it's getting those really large numbers out of that Delta table. Okay, so I think that kind of covered. Oh, the one thing, one more thing I wanted to go through. So I have an import model in here. Now you can actually do that. You can do DAX queries, obviously, on my import model. You can do the input data model, and you can edit this. Now, if you want to use the DAX query view in the web, non-DirectLake semantic models, and you say, oh, Zoe, but it's grayed out, right? So this is my import model. I have 34 measures. This is the actual one that I built a few years back. It's on my blog. It's the AdventureWorks data set, but I created this guy. This was before field parameters and all that kind of stuff. So it's one of the ones I actually created for kind of data challenge. Now I went ahead and let me show you how I do OneLake integration. Oh, so before, if these are grayed out, the open data model, you need to go turn that preview feature on for the editing of the semantic model in the service. And that is in here, this one right here, this data model settings. User can edit the data models in the Power BI service. And the reason why the DAX preview is behind it is because you can make those changes to those measures. We are going to have kind of a read-only view coming soon, but right now it requires write access. All right, so if I go to this model and I go to settings, down here, you'll see OneLake integration. And you just turn that on and then refresh your model. And in a few minutes, the data will be in the OneLake. You do also need to have the large semantic model storage format turned on, which is pretty easy to do. That when I did this model, I just took a few seconds for that one, a few seconds for this one, and I was on my way. So now I have that data over here. So I have that data now. OneLake integrated it. So I created another lake house here, and I shortcutted to that data. Let me get it. I didn't bring them all in because I wanted to demo this one. Right, so I'm going to go to my thing here. There's my semantic model with my OneLake integration, and I can see all my tables. There's folders. Right, so I can bring them all in if I wanted to. Let's just bring them all in. Oh, wait, I already have date. I don't want to bring in data in twice. You can't do that. Okay, so I'll do that and my switch calendar, sure. So these are some slicers and some things I have in the model, and I can go ahead and create those shortcuts to my lakehouse, right? And if I click on any of these, you'll see the data preview show up. If you go to the OneLake in the browser, you'll see that file there in the OneLake Explorer, right? So it's all happy that way. Now, one of the things that unfortunately is almost working, but isn't working just yet, is if I go to that one SQL endpoint, I can't write SQL queries on these tables just yet. But if I go to a notebook, so I have another notebook here, and I have already run this earlier, so I can actually run a SQL query with a notebook on that table, right? So there's my OneLake integration. Here, and I ran that just a minute ago. Let's see if it'll work. So it's actually kind of cool. I found out I could do this. I actually just tried to do it and it worked, and I was so excited. You can actually just literally drag this over here and it's going to generate the Python for you. And you just hit run and it will go ahead and run that PySpark. So anyways, that's kind of, you can do this stuff. Now, if you use obviously the Senpai link, you can use your measures, you can do all much more cooler stuff as well. But this is kind of just at least showing that how you can get the import data into OneLake really quickly and then use it immediately. Hopefully. Okay. So yeah, so I think that's a lot of stuff I've covered already. And if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Directly, when is it? When is DirectQuery without SQL endpoint available? Is it expected to make DirectQuery faster because it doesn't? Then it still has to check, even if you don't have anything in the SQL endpoint that's causing directly to pull back, it's going to have to still check, right? And so every now and then you're going to see a little bit of a slowdown to check that SQL endpoint. With DirectQuery OneLake, you won't have to do that.
And then we have one more question here from Ramesh. So his question is, any tips on optimizing large direct lake models? That is, let's say a couple of billion rows in the detailed fact table. I assume it's still a good practice that we should create partitions for frequently queried columns, create aggregate tables where necessary, only bring in the data you need, etc. So I guess his question is, what are some of the tips you have for optimizing direct lake on large models and tables?
Yeah, so Sandy probably has the better answer to that question than me, but make sure it's V-ordered, make sure you're not using GUIDs, and really it's about your data types at that point and making sure you check your cardinality, right? Having a 2 billion GUID ID column will not make you happy, right? It's going to eat up a lot of memory. that kind of stuff. Make sure it's V-ordered. The Lakehouse does a good job of getting it in the right format without having to do too much else on that side. AutoAgs I don't believe it's working on the Direct Lake. It's really for DirectQuery and those kind of applications. So if you're doing like SQL endpoint, DirectQuery, something like that, then you definitely want to employ all of those tactics that you have at your fingertips, but not for Direct Lake. Direct Lake is supposed to just kind of scan it.
Yep. And I'll just add to that a couple of things just based on my experience, and I'll paste a chat in the chat link here as well. So what Zoe alluded to earlier regarding turning off the fallback. So make sure that for best performance, you do thorough testing when you're developing, and
Yep.
then make sure that it is in directly, because then it's not scanning and all that. 2, we ordered that Zoe mentioned. 3, table maintenance seems to be a really big factor. You need to make
Vacuuming.
sure that it is optimized, vacuumed, so that when the query is sent, it is not scanning all the Parquet files in your Delta. As far as partitioning is concerned, the partitioning does not seem to affect DirectQuery a whole lot. So the link that I just shared with you, it shows that it sometimes helps, it sometimes doesn't help. Now you also want to make sure that it is, you also want to make sure that you want to query that delta table in Spark. And in general, the guidelines from Databricks, Microsoft is that if the table is less than 1 terabyte, uh, generally don't consider partitioning, and it doesn't seem to help directly a whole lot. So runtime 1.3 is coming out, which has liquid clustering, which seems to help directly as well as Spark performance. So I think that's going to help significantly.
Yep.
Okay.
All those are
Another
good
thing,
things.
Zoe, I got from one towards the last end, read only for open data model. I think that one definitely I'm looking forward to because I've heard from many clients, right? They want to enable it, but they are also afraid that if you can't turn off XMLA at dataset level or the workspace level, right? So it's
Yep.
good to hear that that's coming, that users can go look at the model, query it, but not necessarily make any changes. So good to know that.
Yep. Yeah, that's coming. So right now you're still limited to Live Connect in Power BI Desktop, which will give you both experiences as well, right? So if you can see that here, I'm live connected to that Direct Lake. I can see the model. I can run DAX. I can create some measures here if I want to. I can do further analysis without making changes to the semantic model. So not upsetting the person who's managing that semantic model by doing a whole bunch of stuff or deleting something accidentally. So you can safely play here.
That's awesome.
I probably have one question though. Zoe, maybe you probably, I don't know if you will have answer or not, but traditionally like Power BI, I'm doing it for since it came out, and import is always the way to go, right?
Yeah.
Is Microsoft seeing there's a shift? People are using Direct Lake, or what's Microsoft vision in terms of when they feel this whole Direct Lake is now taking over than import, like 2 years from now, 5 years, what they need to do to get there, right? I understand that like this is amazing feature and all the stuff, performance and all the stuff we see, but I guess there are many strings attached to it, and in general, what do you came from as a, I never knew that you came being a Power BI consultant. Well, what do you think is like how what you seen, you lived in a power import world, like is it changing? Like I don't know if you can how you can answer that diplomatically, but yeah.
You have put me on the spot there, but no, I mean, import is fantastic. I mean, we own the whole thing, right? So that's why it's so fast, right? The analysis services owns that data, it's their data, you can't touch it, right? So eventually we want to bring in some more experiences like that with Direct Lake, right? And have these things, especially like from a consultant side, right? It's very hard for me to like, hey, can I have some Azure resources? I really like a database now. Thanks. Fabric gives you that at your fingertips, right? And I'm like, cool, I can just spin up this database and do a SQL endpoint. I can do this. I can do a notebook. And like, this is really awesome, right? And so I think that like is really from like the Power BI consultant in me. I'm like, ooh, I can do all these cool things, and I don't have to ask anybody for permission on an Azure subscription. This is fantastic. I can do what I want. And so, like, especially when these large, like managing like a large semantic model with a lot of data is painful, right? I remember
Indeed.
like 5 gigs in Power BI desktop. I'm like, do. Then I learned incremental refresh. I'm like, okay, life is a bit better, but now I can't see all the data. And so that kind of stuff. So like this, like I'm like spinning up a billion rows and just playing with it, right? And then it's like nothing. Right. So as we get like a lot of times, even for smaller companies, for smaller, individuals, like you have a lot of data at your fingertips. And I think what Direct Lake is answering that kind of need to be able to access it and analyze it much faster than we ever could before. And we're no longer now limited to kind of, I have 8 gigs in my memory. I have 4 gigs in my memory. I mean, I remember the first time I managed a SQL Server analysis services, and I'm like, where is all my server memory gone? Right? So I had to keep feeding it. And then I realized maybe I should actually learn some semantic modeling trips so I don't have to keep upping the memory every month when I add a table to this thing. Right. So that kind of stuff, like, really is kind of pushing, it's going to kind of hope, pushing that momentum. Obviously, we're making a big bet in that direction with all of these cool things. Direct Lake is still coming out. We have so many ideas. We want to put them out as fast as possible. We have so much excitement and momentum on it. So one of the big things is we really need your feedback, right? So if there's something like we see a lot of feedback, like, hey, I can't do calculated columns, I can't have multiple data sources, I can't have calculated tables, right? We're releasing those things as soon as we can, right? As soon as we can get those things out, we will do it. Like we want to make sure we kind of limit those things and then eventually have it so that Direct Lake is just like, you have one table on Direct Lake, maybe it's one in import, one in this. So you can still have that kind of experience that we all know and love with Power BI.
Okay. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I'm looking forward for my first project on Direct Lake. Once I've done that, then it's pretty much I'm gonna forget import and gonna 100% Direct Lake. So no, it's so much looking forward to that. No, good to hear that. Like at least we have another option, parallel to import. Like before that there was only import or DirectQuery, but
then DirectQuery was kind of painful
right.
in its
So now there's a third player in the market. I guess that will take over. Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Beautiful. Anybody have any questions? I'm going to share my screen just to wrap up the things before we go. All right. I'm sharing or not? Am I?
I'm not sharing. No, not sharing yet.
I'm not. Okay, I will do now. Perfect. Here you go. Right. Thanks, Zoe. And I just want to let everyone know next event, which is actually within 2-3 weeks. Wow, that's so fast. Why you do that, Sandeep? It's like Gilbert is joining from Australia, talking about Power BI performance testing tool. I never used that. This is going to be very, very interesting. So looking forward to it. Soon, registration for this will open on Meetup, so stay tuned. And last but not least, okay, look at that. I had my forms integrated within Power BI, but did not work, so whatever.
He's a cute little birdie.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, for sure. I think the problem is I have many profiles and forms are in one profile and and that's what happens. But I'm not going to fix that. I already have the link in the chat. Did I? Yeah. Sandeep, in the meantime, you want to say something to Zoe? Good stuff. Yeah. So
Sandeep's like, Sandeep's like, could you just ship the Direct Lake on OneLake faster? That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, we just We do this little thing on Notebook, Zoe, just for your knowledge. Sandeep did the script. We have this Microsoft form. Then we take the data in Fabric, in Notebook, and then we run this query, and we pick the winners. Like
And
this
we
is
could have
his.
absolutely done that, all of that in Excel. But Perv is like, we are a Fabric Power BI user group. We have to use a
He's like, do
notebook.
in
We
Excel. I'm
have
like,
to.
no, 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 no. We're gonna make things complicated for ourselves. So that's what we're doing. So I'm gonna give a few more minutes for people because I see because right now only 3 people fill up the form. Like guys, it's only like 2 or 3 questions. What topics you are looking forward for, and how you like this session. That's pretty much it. So, and of course, Sandeep and I, you sharing your name and email just because of the raffle. We are not the marketing company where we're gonna bog you down with some stuff. We have other things to do. So please do share your name so that we can contact you if you win the raffle.
Otherwise,
That's
otherwise, Perv, it's easy, right? Whoever the 3 people are, they are the raffle
yeah.
winners. We don't
Then
have
we
to
don't
go
need to
through.
run the no, Sandeep. But from those 3 people, we need to pick up who's the first and second.
Okay.
That's the
See, there
problem,
you go.
right? Yeah. Okay, here you go. So I have few of those. So I'm gonna stop recording because I have to switch between many monitors, so that I don't want to record that. But thanks, Zoe. Stay online. So we will show you the Fabric fun. And thanks everyone for joining. I'm gonna stop recording and we will continue on raffle draw. If it doesn't work, that's Sandeep's problem. By the way, just ending on that note. Bye. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing and stop. No, I should stop. I still share and stop recording. Where is the recording thing? Oh man. Teams. Oh, stop. Okay, perfect. Anyhow, this whole